When I do my tours here of the Elder Valley the Museum there back, I start here with our wall of history. Here we have the homestead map of all the homesteaders. The first set homesteaders east of Athabasca. You look on the left-hand side of this map here, you see the Athabasca River. This is Highway 63, Highway 55 that runs from Athabasca all the way east to Highway 63. So that's about, everything's done in miles back then. So 18 miles is 32 kilometers, right? This map is about 20 square miles, right? 20 by 20, right?
Gil, I have a question.
Right?
The question is, what's a homestead?
Okay, good. I'm glad you asked that because that's, yeah. First of all, when I say the first settlers, in other words, anybody know when Alberta became province?
No.
Alberta, 1905. So
1905.
you see this map? 1905. This is the first homesteads Alberta opened up in this area. These are the first settlers here between 1905 and 1915. Now, each one of these squares is a legal description. And when you homesteaded, you registered a piece of land and the government allotted you 1/4 section. Now,
160 acres.
okay, so now, how am I going to explain that? Each one of these legal description is a section of land. So you'll see on each legal description, there's 4 squares. Okay, a section of land is a mile by a mile. Quarter section is half mile by half mile. So you could see each of those highlights. Those are quarter sections. That's all they were given out. Now, someone would say, well, couldn't they get more land? No. The Homestead Act, which came from the Dominion Act of the early settlers, this homestead had certain requirements. You didn't have to buy this land. The Homestead Act gave you the land, but it had some requirements. Okay, you had to meet some certain conditions, and then, of course, if you did well with 1/4 section, you could move on to the next. Right? What overall the research I've done about history, knowing how land works and farms work and how everything's supposed to be done, big, right? It's too bad they didn't give you a section of land. If everybody got a section of land, most of them may have stayed, or who knows what might be the outcome. The quarter section is what the province was willing to give a settler at that time. Now, what was required from the Homestead Act? Eventually, you had to live on the land, as brutal as Alberta was, but you didn't, not right away. But you had to clear the land, build a home, live on the land, and develop it. What happened before the 1900s? Alberta, Saskatchewan, anything east of Manitoba was all part of the fur trade, right? People were here before Alberta became a province, but it was all part of the fur trade, right? So one of the water routes from, let's say, Manitoba west was the Clearwater. Clearwater took you a bit west and then north, right? So there was all kinds of fur trades going on back then. As a matter of fact, the history I've gotten into lately was there's a connection between natives and the blacks or any settlers during the fur trade because the natives knew the land, they know how to hunt it, harvest it or whatever. So it was a lot of common law relationships, marriages between natives and natives, and you'll hear lots of natives that have French names, because even before Alberta did this, Quebec fur traders were moving west, right? Okay, even before the Homestead Act. So lots of natives will have French names, Cardinal. There's all kinds of French names, right? Okay. So I've been getting into the history of the connection between the natives and the settlers, right? Okay. I always say 1800s fur trade, 1900s agriculture farming, right? Okay. So anyway, like I said, Homestead Act required you to clear the land, build a home, and turning it into a farming land, right? Okay. And and of course, you know what Alberta winters were like, right? Yeah. By the time people could actually live on these properties, I'm saying it was pretty brutal, right? So I just want to point something else out here. This is 20 miles across. Here is where we are now. The Amber Valley settlement used to be 2 miles east of us. Okay, and if you notice, there's a little bit of a ravine in there. Actually, it's a creek, right? Okay, so you cross this creek. That's called New Pine Creek. Now you'll notice all these settlements here. They all go along this water road. Like I have to directly highlight that, right?
Okay.
There's the New Pine Creek, and why did people settle there? Because back in the day there was no water and sewer, right? You settled by water or by water, right? That's the same all over. Why when they have all these floods, I say, but why? You ask the question, why are people settling by water? Because that's where you settled, as close to the water as you could, right? Okay. So yeah. So New Pine Creek, all of this through here, and New Pine Creek runs all south and goes all the way to Rochester. That's New Pine Creek, right? So what else can I tell you about the settlement here? You'll notice there's all of these pink highlights. The pink highlights are the blacks that settle here, right? And there's another one. Oh, okay. The orange, the darker orange, there's a few of them. Anybody know Harpers?
Yeah.
Okay, Harpers are, yeah, they weren't part of the original settlement, but they came here later.
What other
So-
family was part of that?
What's that?
What other families? Harpers and
You mean it came later?
yeah, that weren't part of the original. I know the Harpers.
Yeah. Okay, but there's an H Brown here, Raddick. There's a Saunders,
Oh, okay.
a Doug Harper. There's a August Hope. He's there. There's a
Oh,
few here.
these two
Yeah. A Romeo.
Edwards.
Yeah.
Weren't they part of the original?
Okay, but Romeo didn't own land. This is Romeo with his own land. Okay. Right? So they weren't originally part of this
Okay.
10-year settlement, but later, right? Okay. My dad actually settled in like this whole. I call this whole area they call it the homesteads east of Athabasca. Amber Valley, I didn't know, used to just refer to a few sections of land, in the New Pine Creek. But this whole thing, like I say, anybody settled here in this time, to me, is all part of that same history, right? My dad settled over, if you went over to 2 miles over, when you're 2 miles over, you're at that Amber Valley Road. Okay? That's why it's labeled Amber Valley Road. So you go to Amber Valley Road, you see a sign that says Amber Valley Road runs north-south. And it goes south all the way down to before it hits Flat Lake. And then it turns west and becomes Paxton Road. And Paxton Road takes you almost straight east into Athabasca. That was the old road. Before this highway, the way to go from Athabasca to points east, like say Lac La Biche, right? That was Rail Town. You came on this strip. You went to Paxton Road, Amber Valley Road, which went north, up by the pulp mill. Eventually took you over to grassland, and then eventually over Lac La Biche. But even before grassland, that road used to take you zigzag over to Donneville. And the old road was Donneville east. There's a highway 855. I drive the school bus around there. Says, "Oh, what's this? We're out in the country, and I'm thinking there's a highway out here." That was the old roads to Lac La Biche before they
That's
built
where
it.
they came.
Before they built these long highways. As a matter of fact, some of the early settlers here said when they were building this straight road, highway back then, there's a bit of muskeg and they thought they were crazy because it was really soft and stuff, right? But the engineering we have now, they can build roads anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Right? At one time, you couldn't build a road straight like that. You used to go like
Around
this
the Muscat.
because it was to stay on the high ground, right?
Yeah.
Right? When you're driving in the country, you're on this road that go like this. Okay, this is an old county road, right? Whereas the newer roads go straight north and south, right? Okay. What else can I tell you about this?
I have questions.
So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I know that they're all together. Were they aware of how close they were together in that area?
Okay, let me tell you something about homesteading.
Okay,
Pretty hard to do something on your own with a homestead. You have to work together. Okay? Now, here's the classic example I tell people when that kind of question comes up. If you were going east of Edmonton, you'd hit Fort Saskatchewan. Then you go east to that, Lamont, Mondare, Chipmund, all these little communities, right? And right driving there, and of course I did a lot of bus driving, but some of these towns are so close together. They're only 20 miles apart. So when I started looking into the history of that, the reason they were 20 miles apart, a couple of things. Each one of those little towns were different settlements. Some are Ukrainian, some are the Germans, French.
Yeah.
Lamont is French.
Yeah.
But you go there, you may not find too many French people.
But there's Ukraine.
Yeah, and there's Ukraine, the Ukraine sausage, the old sausage, right? You go to Ukraine, there and buy their sausage. Each one of those towns are only 20 miles apart. And I was talking to a principal when he came in, he says, you know why those towns are so close together? Two, because of the groups that settled there at the time. And back in the day, 20 miles is how far you could go with a wagon during in daylight, right? Like to go from one town to another. So that's how they, settled it. But there would have been a rail line involved, right? So there's a railroad, and then eventually there was no wagon road. But everything was pretty slow back then. If you were moving your crop, grain, or whatever by wagon, it took you forever, right? Now, if you're in farming, if you're not doing it by sections of land, because you use such big. You ever see all the farm equipment they use now? Right?
She was shocked to see a tractor on the road. I said, and we only saw one. That's
Yeah. But they're huge.
Yeah.
At one time, back in homestead days, and you see this a lot on the movies, a horse pulling one plow, right? And it went back and forth, back and forth. That's the way it was done back then. Now, it's done by these rows of discs, right? Like a big tractor with something that's...
And they take up the whole road.
Yeah. Well, at one time they used to be, they went from 6 feet wide to 10 feet wide, and now I'm sure they go 20 feet.
Yeah, sometimes,
Yeah, and these huge tractors are so expensive. If you don't have sections and sections of land, a good example, it's not on here. Who am I thinking of? The Russians. Hutterites? Yeah, Hutterites will buy up sections and sections of land, right? But they've got massive equipment.
Yeah.
They're the ones I've seen that are really organized with farming, and that's why they succeed. But they have a thing too when it comes to their religion. They don't pay taxes. I don't agree with that, but that's part of what how they are able to do things better than most, right? Because even if
not
you
only do they know each other to help each other, but can you presume they also had a good relationship with the indigenous?
Well, you know what? I think once we got into the farming part of it, there wasn't that mixed culture so much going on. And that was during the fur trade,
Okay.
right?
My last question, I promise. The reason you know this is that because by 1905, the province was actually recording these families coming in, like
Yeah.
documents.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Actually, when you speak about documenting, there wasn't a lot of documenting going on until, the migration of people into Canada. All of a sudden now they want to register all these people. When they went to register all the natives, again, it was in the 1900s. That was because before that, there was nothing, none of that was done. And most of the registering the native population was done by the missions and the schools and all that and during the
Yeah.
and during that time, to me, that's okay. Again, we're going back to early Alberta. I don't like to get into it's not part of this history, but when Alberta was doing that, well, they thought, well, we're going to take these primitive natives and educate them because they're savages, right? Like, I mean, give your head a shake. Who's been surviving on this land long before before the settlers came, right? But anyway, they thought they were actually doing them a favor by taking the native children and putting them in residential schools, right? And they wouldn't let them talk their language or practice their culture. But that was all done through church. I mean, there's horror stories there. But anyway, I don't want to go there. Anyway, you'll notice there's a settlement here. That's following a body of water. Then here you'll notice it's kind of bare, because here's if you go a little bit west of here, it's all muskeg area. It's low land, so it's drying out. What happens is as our water tables drop and the land becomes more usable, then you can clear it and turn it into farmland, right? So what else can I tell you about it? Oh, you mentioned section of land. When we go to quarter section, the quarter section is 360.
Quarter section is 160.
A quarter is 160, but a section of land is
640.
yeah, there we go, 640. Okay, I was going double there, but anyway, yeah. But everything done, when we're looking at here, everything was done in miles back when this was early 1900s. Everything's metric now, right? But the lay of the land's still all in miles, right? When I went to school, I don't know if I went through the transition from standard measure to metric.
Yeah.
So I'm always converting in my head, right? Right?
And I went before you.
Yeah. So you had to do it on your own. But when I went to school, we were making the switch.
Yeah.
Like the only kind of comparison you can make, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A township, well, I don't know if I want to get into how townships and range roads work. Are you familiar with township range? Okay. Are you familiar with how city like Edmonton's laid out? Avenues run east-west. Yeah. Well, in rural Alberta, your townships run east-west. Okay?
And your range roads.
And your range roads run north-south. And the streets in Edmonton run north-south, right? I did a bit of driver training, and I used to have truckers all the time, and they didn't like Edmonton. I says, why not? It's easier than Calgary. And I explained that to them. Oh, well, but I don't know Edmonton. I says, no. I says, I don't care where you're from, I says, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. I says, you can figure out east, northeast. I says, then you'll know because we used to have guys that were busing from Calgary, get up to Edmonton, and then they got lost in the city. I says, and he said, oh, I don't know Edmonton. I says, follow the roads that say north. I said, you eventually get there. When my wife and I first tripped for our honeymoon to the coast, she says, how come you not use the map and everything? She didn't know, I'd never been to BC before. I says, if it says west, I'm going the right direction. I'm going to hit the ocean eventually.
Well, it's like coming here, we missed a turn, and I said, oh, well, just go further and then we'll catch a boat that goes that way. But you have to be from the country.
Yeah, you got to get the lay of the land.
You have to know that, okay, we're going the right way. Just
my wife on her honeymoon had her map out, and she's trying to figure out where we're going, and if it says west, we're going the right direction, right? Just a matter of, if you want to stay on the main highway, sure. You want Highway 1 or Highway 3, or you want the Yellowhead, right? But just stick to the roads heading west, right?
yeah.
What else do you need to know? Oh, okay. When I was talking about township and range roads, Amber Valley is Range Road 202. Okay? The first two numbers is the astral range, which is 20. The last number, 2, is mile 2. So let's say, where are we at? Where's Amber Valley? Okay, that's Range Road 20, mile 2. Range Road 20, mile 3. Range Road 20, mile 4, which is 204 here. Then eventually it won't say 206 because when it gets to 6, it changes to the next range road. Okay, so this is range road 20, 20, 20, 20. Then it becomes 21. 21, 21. It does that for 6 miles.
Oh, it's 6 months.
6 miles.
Okay.
Okay. Now the only relation you make 6 miles to metric is every 6 miles is 10 kilometers. So I'll tell kids that go to school, it says the range road, you know you can't write, it says the range road will change every 10 kilometers. It becomes
So 10 kilometers?
yeah, well, it's 6 tenths, right? It's like 60 to, like the speed limit, right? 100 miles an hour is 60 miles an hour is 100 kilometers. Yeah, same. Yeah, takes a while, but it's close enough, right? Okay. So what else do we need to know here? Oh, these other little, I should point out these little ones. You'll see, these blue highlights. Okay, we're here. We go a couple miles over in that Amber Valley settlement. 1, 2, 3, 4. One is that highway sign on the highway of the history of Amber Valley. This here shows Bowens. There's 2 Bowen settlements. The one that
Obadiah's?
Obadiah's is this one. It says Willis Bowen here.
Okay, that's one.
Okay, and then it says Roscoe, but Myrna Wisdom.
Oh,
Well, she's a
so that's her
that's her homestead here.
Reese then.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, they point out a few Edwards, right? So those were early.
And then who's the other one? There's
Yeah.
one more.
Yeah.
The blue one, the other one. There's one, a little.
Oh, that blue one is actually in the cemetery.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's blue. These are a little green. Anyway, have you've been there, right? Have
Yeah.
you gonna take these people over to the
Yeah,
cemetery?
I just have to.
Yeah. Because the headstones will give you a bit of the
Yeah.
history of
You
all the
have
people
to
that sat
give
there.
me.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how far down. But is it? Is
I
it turn
can
at
take
the
you over there.
maps where the maps used to live? Is that the turn off? Where
Like-
Lester's place used?
Well, you go 2 miles over to Amber Valley Road,
Okay, and it's
and
that-
then you go right,
So
right.
you go south.
You go south for
Okay.
2 miles,
Yeah.
and then right again, and you go 1 mile. Oops, here we just went. Here we are here. Okay, you go
2
1,
miles.
2 miles, and then you go right 1 mile, or maybe a mile and a half. Oops, where
Is it right?
Yeah, you got to go right again. This is south.
Oh,
Okay, if you're going from here, you're heading
Yes.
east, turn right, go south, 2 miles, and right again,
And you're heading.
and then you're going to head west. Good.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. For 1 mile, and then you turn right again, and you're going north because
Is there any signs?
the only one you got is when you go east, you see Amber Valley Road. It'll also say cemetery,
Okay.
which points you south. But after that, it's a little bit of guesswork.
In a general direction.
Yeah.
Well,
Over there.
But anyway,
I've been there before.
I can take you over there.
Yeah, I've been there. I could probably find it. It's just.
Yeah.
GPS.
Yeah.
I don't
Uh,
think it's in the GPS. It might
But
be.
yeah, but that's what. Okay, I just explained. Explaining how to get to the cemetery.
that's-
But I can take you as far as Amber Valley Road, and then
Yeah, I know
because you know what?
it's Amber Valley.
I'll tell people to go. The directions for there, and they get lost. Well, you shouldn't because
No.
once you go south, right? You just keep going south until you hit a crossroad, and once you can
2
turn
miles.
right, then you can go right, and then you turn right, and then the next crossroad, another mile, turn right again, and once you're on that last stretch, there'll be a sign that says Amber.
Yeah, and
it'll
it
say
has-
cemetery.
And it kind of goes around a little.
Yeah. Well, it's just once you see the cemetery sign, you
Yeah.
turn left there,
Yeah.
and you're actually going. What you've done is gone 2 miles, 1 mile, and you're heading.
You're still
Oh.
heading south again.
Well, no,
Is
you've
it-
gone south, then you go west, and then you turn north. Okay.
Good north.
Yeah, because you're making a horseshoe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you're coming back north because you can't go 1 mile and across. You have to go 2 miles and around.
Yeah, and then to
You're
come
going
back.
around. Okay.
Yeah.
So
okay.
anyway, so what you're doing is you're doubling back.
Back out.
And then once you're heading north, you'll see a sign that says cemetery, and you just turn there and it'll take you over there.
Okay.
Ken, listen, once you see that next cemetery sign,
Mhm.
it could be marked now. It should be marked because I think what happens is they put up those signs and people purposely just knock them down, right? But anyway, come on, let's, oh, there's one more thing you need to put on these homesteads. Oh, there's another point of interest, sir. There's red dots. 1, 2, 1 by one, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's about 10 of them. Those are the schools. Back in early, during the homesteads, people had to find their own way to the schools, but they built those schools let's say every 10 square miles, right? Right? So in this 20 square miles, there was 10 schools, right? Growing up, kids would always say, I always heard stories from my grandparents about walking so many miles to school, walking 5 miles to school, uphill both ways. So but that actually took place. But you know what? People are so resilient, just like we say our kids are. They survived, right? There wasn't a lot of heat or natural gas and power, but they lived here. Yeah. I remember when I grew up, we were outside all the time, right? We didn't have much TV at the time, so yeah, we weren't into it. But anyway, that's the schools, right? And those schools, again, remember I said there's no power, running water and everything. Somebody had to go to those schools and start the wood stove to heat up the schools before everybody went there. You'll have different stories where people got to school on wagons and horses, and then the winter time and sleighs.
Or they would call them
Yeah.
skidders, or
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what they
yeah,
call
yeah.
them.
So
I'll
it
think
was-
of the names.
Well, but anyway,
Horses.
sleighs, horse and sleighs, yeah.
No, they call them.
Yeah, there's different names.
Yeah, they pull it by horse.
Yeah. And, cause they didn't start busing kids to school till the 60s. Right, 1960s, so you're going between 1915 and 1960, that was 35 years of people
Up
working.
here?
Yeah, it was the 60s before they started busing.
Well, I was bused to school in Camp Sagas.
What time, or what year?
When I started school,
Oh, or she's giving away her age now.
We do the math.
I did, yeah, there we go. Yeah.
it would have been right around there.
Yeah.
So my question, I guess they were all integrated schools. There's no segregated school. between
No,
black
there's no
and
such thing back.
Exactly.
Yeah, there was-
So what?
Oh, well, you know what, you lived it, but there was no separating schools back then.
Except at Camp C, they tried.
Yeah, I'm sure. But you
Well,
know
no,
what?
they did. They
They did, they succeeded?
Oh no, they actually wouldn't allow the black kids to go to the school. There was a school at Carville. They wouldn't allow
Which is
them
how
to
far?
go. Huh?
Oh, okay, you're talking about another place.
Camp C, yeah. It's,
Okay, I know where Campsie is, but.
Yeah,
you
but there
said
was the school was called Carville.
But-
So I don't know exactly.
Was it the same area?
The same area.
Okay.
And they wouldn't, my aunt, and there was a few other kids. My aunt was the oldest of
Okay.
the family. She didn't go to school till she was about 8 because they didn't want the black kids going.
Yeah.
So I have the dates, but 1930 something,
Yeah.
the county finally decided that they were going to build the school for the black kids to
Okay.
go to.
Okay, but
It
you know
took
what, it
a
depends
long
on,
time.
the population that was settling at the
Well, there
same
was
time.
hardly anybody. There was
I
no
know,
black
but still,
kids.
somebody brought that up, because you know what, I've never heard stories about, I've heard stories about struggles, but I never heard about them having to build separate.
Well,
schools.
they built the school, but once they got it built, it took about 10 years.
Yeah,
But, because they went and they did the survey, and what they did is they drew a line, and so only the kids that were all the black farm, they
Yeah.
couldn't go to the school.
Yeah.
They did build it,
Yeah.
but by the time they got it built,
okay.
a lot of the people that had moved in the community, it was a newer school,
Yeah.
so most of the people sent their kids
Okay.
to the new school.
Okay. Like everybody else, they're here to survive.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, you go back far enough, everybody's from somewhere. So don't decide who is and who isn't, right? A Canadian, right?
Yeah.
Right? If you want to go back far enough, the only people that are real Canadians are your native people,
Yeah.
right? They're the First Nation, right? So why is people bringing all their prejudice, right? Like, anyway, I don't even.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
yeah. So anyway, Amber Valley is here, which is an hour and a half drive from it, or well, 2 hours depending on what part of it you're from. But there was other settlements in Alberta, right? I don't know if you know about them. There's 4, right? Campsie, right? This map here, it just showing Alberta. The 2 big dots is Edmonton, Calgary, and then around here they've shown the 4 settlements in Alberta here. Campsie, which is over by Barhead. I always tell people, see, if you go to Barhead, it's pretty easy to find.
About an hour and a half.
Yeah,
or 2 hours.
Yeah.
From here.
Well, from it, yeah. Or from Edmonton, you're about an hour and a half, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
from here it's,
No, and we just made it in an hour or so, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just less than an hour to go to Westlock. Right.
oh,
So-
less than an hour, okay. So
Yeah, just less than an hour, but you're still 20 minutes from Westlock. Okay? But anyway, no matter. If you went straight east on Yellowhead on Highway 16, just past Lake St. Anne, Lake Wadman, there's a settlement called Wildwood. Okay. Now, when it was just a 2-lane highway, I could always look over and say, "There's Wildwood," right?
don't blink.
Now it's a 4-lane. Now that's what I tell people. So now it's a 4-lane divided highway. If you're not looking, you'll
Yeah.
miss it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I drive by and say, "Okay, where's
Oh, they just-
Wildwood's around here somewhere." Yeah, you got to be looking for it because it's not so easy to see. Right? But there was a black settlement there, and this little framework here tells you about the settlement. I always thought the settlement in Wildwood were small, but if you look at this group here, there must be 40, 50 people here, right?
Apparently Wildwood was the largest.
Yeah.
Larger than Amber Valley.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
I like to say that without
I know. But
because of the numbers. You can see the registration, right? See, we can verify all these from the Lands Act, right? These highlights there from what I was saying, I found there was 65 families that registered homesteads back then. Okay. Now someone says, "Oh, there's more than that." There was more than that many people. Yes, there was, but not everybody registered, right? Okay. Or some of them probably spent what money they had just to get here, right? But I don't know. There could be various reasons why people didn't register, which makes it interesting. While if you didn't have to, you had to pay a fee to register. So you didn't have the money for that, right? Anyway, okay, I told you Wildwood is. There's another place, one more place in Alberta, the 4th one. If you went south to Leduc and then headed west on Highway 19, I believe. Anyway, you hit a place called Breton. That was an actual town. Okay?
still is.
Yeah. Breton's still there. The school is their museum, and I was pretty impressed. I finally made it there. I've only been there a few times, but I really liked their museum. I always like to say they have a nice museum. I says, but we do a better job on our history.
Well,
just they're not here to defend themselves, so I like to brag. I like to brag when I can, right? So anyway, that's those settlements. So, but I like to make comparisons. Like it takes an hour and a half to drive to Campsie or to Amber Valley or whatever. But now back then it was all wagon, right?
Yeah, and they used to go back and forth for
Yeah.
picnics and stuff to all
It
these.
was yeah. So yeah, that's it. Oh, there's only one settlement that we show for Saskatchewan, and it's called, what is it?
Redstone.
Mainstone, right? I mean, people will say there's always been other settlements and stuff, but it's really hard to prove because you got to look for the records, right? Okay. Like I know, I've heard stories where people said, "Oh yeah, we lived in Saskatchewan," but then there's the only mainstay is the only place they've shown, right? Okay, but there's been people they live there, but you know what? Once they move out, somebody buys up the property, then the history's gone, right? Yeah. Now, anything to my left here is all the media coverage that's been done on Amber Valley. Like we show at Jesse Bowen in the military. This is the Mountain family. I grew up in some mountains, one in particular. You know Al Mountain, do you? Alan Mountain? Okay, Alan's been in busing transportation for about 30, 40 years. And do you ever hear of a company called Buses R Us? Al's been a mechanic in with big busing for 35, 40 years. Anyway, this is his history of the family, right? And the mountains just live when you get up to Amber Valley Road. You go north. There was maps.
Mm-hmm. I
Okay.
know maps.
Okay. Well, if you went east of maps there, where Buddy and Linda Phelps lived, there was Katie. Well, went by the name Williams, but she was a Melton. Katie Melton. That's the Williams Melton family group in there. Okay.
And she went by Williams. Was she really?
Well, I think she was a Williams, but I think her partner was a Melton.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
She was by
so-
Melton.
And then he
Oh,
was
right,
on.
bye.
He is, speaking of Melton, Alan used to be bothered by that his mom Katie, his name wasn't on these on the homestead map, and I kind of thought that was interesting. So anyway, I started looking at it. Back then, typical, and probably from British thing, land was never registered in a woman's name.
Oh,
Okay, okay. Right. And I did a pickup on, remember this show about Braveheart? If you didn't have a male heir from your family, that land went back to the crown. It didn't pass down to the that comes out of the story. I don't know if you pick up these little things when they did Braveheart and Robin Hood. That's what they says. You don't find a male heir or get a husband, you're gonna lose the land, right? And this is
Gail's looking at me like.
But you know what? It's not something you're gonna see, but you pick up on those little things. That's just the way it was. Yeah. Oh, I like this one. Amber Valley, got a little history about the settlers here. If you go over to the Amber Valley Cemetery, you'll see one of these. Oh, there's a name for this. I call it a
statue or?
Karen, yeah. But anyway, it's got a list of names. Here's you'll see that when you go over to the cemetery. But if you look here, that's a list of names. When I came here and I heard all the stories about Dad, there's nothing more that I love than this list of names because these are all the people that settled in here. And guess what? Remember I said there was only 65 families there, right? Someone says, oh, no, there was 300-400 blacks that came in here at the same time. Yeah, you're talking 300-400 blacks. And they settled in different parts of Alberta, and there could have been more. But not everybody took land, right? And imagine the first trip to the homestead, they says, well, I'm not going to stay here, right? It's pretty brutal, right? You want us to what? Yeah. So lots of people went back, right? I don't know if you, yeah. Some of it, yeah. Anyway, I like this list of names. And common names and lots of I don't know if you know that lots of the blacks that came from the States after the slavery or after emancipation, they took on their slave owners' names. That's where their names come from.
A lot,
right?
yeah.
Right. And some of it was through because they're registered as property with those names, right? Okay. So my name is Williams, and there's lots of Williams, but now with Muslims, lots of them are doing their own, or changing their names, or adapting Muslim names,
Well,
or
it's not even.
because they don't have to, because now that they know the history about their name has to do with slavery,
I don't want to own
some of it, some want to change it. Right?
Or
And the first classic example would be Cassius Clay. Anybody know the history of Cassius Clay?
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Good as all
Well,
that.
when he won the Olympics, he was Cassius Clay. And the story I like when you hear the story of Muhammad Ali, I think it was in Europe he won his Olympic medal, gold. And he went to a restaurant, and he was a big American hero, but they wouldn't serve him at this restaurant. Well, guess what? Now, years later, he's Muhammad Ali, the world champion. And guess what? He was at this restaurant that refused to see him before. Guess what? He told him, do you remember me I used to be Cassius Clay. I won the gold in the American Olympics. So there, you would serve me. And he made, you know how loud he was. He telling everybody. And he walked out of that restaurant. Because, you know, they thought, oh, we got Muhammad Ali, the world's greatest heavyweight, right? He left that restaurant.
But
Because of what they did to him
Yeah.
years ago.
But it's not like I've done quite a few interviews too, and I interviewed like out at Camp C, one of the, some people, and they were, I guess, German well, one family was German. I can't remember what Smeckles were, but they came from Romania or something. And when they came here, they changed their names.
Yeah, yeah.
Because of
The history.
some of the stuff that was going
Yeah,
on
the history. Yeah.
in
So,
their countries. And
guess what? When we know the history, you can say to yourself, yeah, I don't like this. I don't like this association.
well, yeah, and so coming to Canada, then they changed their names. And I heard that it was the same thing with Saunders.
Yeah, yeah.
Saunders and Sanders. There's
Well, probably all of them, because the history of the blacks that came up from the States was they adapted the names from their slave owners. So guess what? Now they know that, okay, I can do something about it. They did. Okay? Because they didn't like the fact that there was owning somebody. That's, well, to us, I don't have to explain that answer. But we were property. Someone says, how come they have all these records of people? Because they were property, right? They were, yeah. So, yeah. And guess what? Emancipation happened in 1865, right? All the Hollywood stories about blacks and all the struggle they had, they didn't let their slaves go. The Civil War ended in 1865, and all those southern states says, yeah, the Civil War is supposed to end, and said, okay, now your blacks are now what we call free men, right? They weren't letting them go, and if they did, they went after them and brought them back.
Well, like
Why? Because they were their property, right? Like, I'm not going to just let you go, right? Yeah, there was a slow transition of the land. They had to give them land. Guess what? The land they gave you and the financing involved, most of them couldn't make it. Like, I mean, how do you go from working for nothing to buy your land and try to make it work, right? Like, you have no idea how that whole system worked.
And so even in Canada, when they emancipated us, they actually emancipated and they said anybody 5 years and younger, you're free.
Yeah.
But everybody else, serve out your term with who you're.
Yeah, you have to settle with your property owner. And when you say that, it sounds like you're talking about land.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're the property.
Yeah. I tell you what, when I was growing up, I didn't go through all this prejudice and stuff because I grew up north. People didn't, it didn't matter who you were. I always said, growing up in Alberta, northern Alberta is cold with the cold. Nobody cared who you were as long as you weren't a bad person, right? And most people were religious. Like, I remember going to church all the time when I was young, right? And yeah, things have changed now. Now, I'll just tell everybody that they done all the media in Alberta. Calgary Herald, Edmonton Journal, various magazines, East Island Alberta magazine. They've all come out and done stories on Amber Valley. Right? The last one to come here from a publishing was, okay, where are you? Right here. Was the Canada Post? No, Post. Oh, shoot, it's National Post. There we go. And they did a story on the Amber Valley. Of course, the story about the Amber Valley ball team came up. Right? There was an Amber Valley ball team. They did a picture in the late 30s.
Baseball.
In baseball.
Yeah.
And it was real baseball, like not basketball. It wasn't slow pitch. Yeah. It was it. But Amber Valley was good. It was all a black team, and they were good. They were serious about their baseball, right? And they used to get invited to tournaments at, let's say, Westlock or Wetaskiwin, all over the place, right? But one thing is about the boys from Amber Valley, they didn't like to lose, right? They were all about, hey, we know this game, right? And I used to hear some of the stories about ball games, but I won't get into it now.
yeah, some of them were very.
Yeah, from Edwards, Kenny Edwards. Yeah, there's a few Edwards. There's a few of the boys were from the same family, right? There's a
Yeah.
Edwards,
and-
there was
and
Browns,
Kenny and-
there's some Browns, right? Big,
Kenny and Jeff.
who is the big, JB?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Brown.
Brown, yeah, he was sick. So anyway, these are the stories. What I should bring up here, because they're highlighted here. We did the commemorative plaque that's out there. Amber Valley's been recognized by postage stamp. You'll see it there, right? Right? And then we also did one more thing. Oh, they did a coin, a commemorative coin, right?
And that's this.
That was just done last, well, Black History Month is in January, so it was.
Was
early-
done this year, I guess.
last-
Was
it this year?
Yeah.
This year, okay. So I think 2020 is when they did the postage stamp. It's nice to to recall or to do these recognition of our history, right? And that's what I'm concerned about. If we don't keep it up, we just don't want it to disappear, right?
Yeah.
Okay? What
Can I
else?
ask one final question, Mr.
That-
Williams? One final question?
No, there's no such thing as final question, because this is school kid there. This is school.
Well, another one comes up.
Why do this? Why do this for you?
To me, it's to preserve history, right? Oh, you know what happened during COVID? The Amber Valley Hall was no longer having functions, right? Because we weren't allowed to have groups, right? But we were allowed to do tours, right? Because we could have a small group. We could tell everybody. But when they first came out with COVID, we had a couple of government officials come out. Well, I tell you, they were really sticky about 6 feet apart and masks and all that stuff. Okay, and yeah, so anyway, the only thing we were allowed to do during COVID for a couple of years was these tours, right? Because usually they were family or small groups, right? To keep up with the regulations. As a matter of fact, there wasn't one other thing we could do. We had tables in the middle of the hall, right? The problem with COVID is when you run up and have a big hall like this, it takes quite a while to clean it, right? So we set up some tables in the middle and said, somebody, if they wanted to rent the hall for a meeting or whatever, you had to use these tables only, so that we didn't have to clean the whole thing, right?
Smart.
So yeah, that worked. We were allowed to have allowed to have small meetings, and we're still able to do tours, right? So yeah, to me, preserving history is all about maintaining it. Oh, what I was getting at with during COVID, lots of people came to visit and didn't know anything about Emerald. Black History Month, gets attention and people come and visit. Someone says, "Oh, I live in Fort McMurray. I drove by here all the time." Didn't know that Amber Valley had any history to do with Black people, so they thought that was interesting. Right? So, I says, "Well, you know what? You go online, you can find all kind of stuff there. All these stories about Amber Valley, it's all online, right? Just gotta know where to look, right?" What else they need to tell you? Oh, the hall. Amber Valley Hall used to be located 2 miles over on the Amber Valley Road. And then we relocated here in late 80s. And then we built this hall in 1990. So this hall's only been here for 35 years, right? Yeah. So it needs some upgrades, but yeah.
So what normally would go on in here?
Oh,
You said the tours or for actual people in the community that
Yeah.
are around or reunions?
I'll start with our fundraisers. Amber Valley will have a chicken supper. And that was our legacy. We used to do the Southern chicken, right? Yeah. Oh, come to Amber Valley. We do the fried chicken, right? Now we've changed it though. Back our like I call myself the next generation, but the people that settled here and their offspring, they used to actually fry the chicken. That was a big deal. Let's go to Amber Valley. They do the old Southern chicken, right? Now, we finally had to go. We had Alberta. Our kitchen is now registered through Alberta Health Services. And when we did that, they suggested, they didn't make us stop frying the chicken. They said, you should go to baking ovens. So now we bake our chicken. Right? And then some people say, well, how come you don't fry the chicken anymore? Well, I'll tell you, our generation didn't fry chicken like they did in the old days. We didn't know what we were doing, right? Even with deep fryers, somebody was kept turning them up. So we were burning the chicken or doing whatever, either undercooking it or overcooking it.
I
right?
remember Doug Harper used to do a lot of the, I can remember him frying chicken.
Yeah, and but anyway, the generation before us knew what they were doing and we didn't. But anyway,
Yeah.
so we finally got into the baking ovens, and then somebody was still fussing about why don't you fry the chicken anymore? And so, and I thought, well, why don't we do both? And they said no. So we did a little survey, right? Most people were good with it. He says, no, we're good with the baking chicken because it's better for you, right? And so they were okay. So we never did go back to the theater. But that's like a legacy for us now. It's not, yeah, we used to live on that. Oh, come do the old southern fried chicken.
And they used to do, well, they still do twice a year.
Yeah, we do that. We do a chicken supper in the spring, which is April, and in the fall, October. And this hall here will be set up for 200 people. Right now, the way it's set up now, this is 10 tables of 12. That's 120. We can put another. We can set it up for 200 people. So our last chicken supper we had 150.
Let's go.
But we did one a year ago, and we had less than 100. So it depends on what's going on. But some people say, well, I didn't know because we don't advertise.
That's true.
The publications of town papers, they used to have, Barhead had its own paper by name. Westlock had its own paper. Athabasca had its own paper, which was called the Advocate. Redwater had its own paper, Lancashire. Now
It's called.
it's called Town Country.
County.
All these little towns are now part of one little publication. But guess what? All those community calendars and ads that are notices in the paper for communities, just they don't do that anymore. They took those out. They want you to pay for that ad space, right? Because revenue for publications has gone down, so they're charging everybody for anything they do. And then to do an ad in the paper for us to publish our chicken suppers, they said that would cost us $300. That's a lot of money for a nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
So they don't do that. So they do the old word of mouth. I said, no, you gotta do better than that. So what we do is we notify somebody at the university, we notify somebody from the town, and somebody at the county to put on their websites, right? And that's another thing. People, oh, we gotta do a website here. Well, yeah, that's true. But you know what? We're still too old fashioned, right? Nobody's into that.